Go. All right. Why don't I open us in prayer? Heavenly Father, Lord, thank you for this day. And God, we just thank you for all that you do in keeping us safe, keeping us sane, and allowing us to come together virtually right now. Thank you for giving us technology to continue to meet safely during a pandemic. And God, I pray that you bless this time together. You said where 2 or 3 are gathered in your name, you're in the midst, and I wholeheartedly believe in that. So be here with us and give us something new and exciting out of these verses, and give us something to practically apply for you. We ask this in your holy name. Amen. All right. This was a really interesting passage, much like others that I've been digging into. And it looks like I pulled up the wrong presentation, which is always fun. So let me correct that really quickly.
You're with family. We're good. We're good.
I know, right? Tell ya.
I mean, I sound like a man, so.
Well, we could always be old school and get our Bibles out.
That part too. I'm ready. Let's do it.
Yeah, we may have to.
Well, I'll go grab mine.
Here we go. All right, so it is 117. I tell you, I had all of this together in my head, and it just was not happening today. That's all right. That is A-okay. Let's see. I feel like the myriad of times that I was in church and had to pull up or provide a time of delay when something was happening in a sound system, or goblins and gremlins and all of that kind of fun stuff that often occur. I feel like I'm using the same stall tactics, except I can't blame it on the AV guy, which would normally be Kevin, right?
That's correct.
Just blame him anyway.
Right. All right. This is actually where we're supposed to be, which is finding the next person to love. All of this is coming from Mark. Well, for the most part, it's Mark. But if you think back the last few weeks, we've talked about loving yourself in order to love others, and have really been focusing on love. And the reason that I wanted to start this year with a deep dive into loving self, loving others, and loving God is because while we're in this transitionary time of Midtown Collective, what do we as an organization want to go forward doing? What do we want to be known for? And how do we want to show up to Sacramento? And I think that showing up in and through love is such an important approach to showing Christ love for us and for others as we continue our journey and our faith walk. So a lot of this today is coming out of Mark. I have some other areas of the Bible that I'll be tackling, but the majority of it is Mark. And this is broken up into three pieces, or the sage advice of so many people is, the 3-point message. But the first one is actively looking for opportunities and to love. And what I found so interesting in this is when you look in Mark 4, Mark begins this story of Jesus, and it says, Jesus began to teach beside the lake again. Such a large crowd gathered that he climbed into a boat there on the lake. He sat in the boat while the whole crowd was nearby on the shore. Number one, Christ was absolutely able to draw a crowd, and we know that. We've seen how many times he did that in the New Testament, and the sheer ability and the magnanimous nature of who he was as a speaker, orator, and savior, and really evangelist, shows up so many times in the in the New Testament. But what I found so interesting in this is, yes, he was able to draw this really, really big crowd, and he did this time and again. But in doing so, he also focused so much of his time in one-on-one relationships. And so, yes, he was, a crowd drawer, but at the same time, there are so many times where we have in the recorded history of the Bible where he did minister one-on-one, and he took that time, which I think is absolutely what we as Christians should do, and what we as people should do, not just Christians, but everyone in general should be having that one-on-one time with those around us. The interesting piece of this, when I started looking through who to focus on, for me, not even for Midtown Collective, but where do I want to invest my time and invest my relationships with others and showing them Christ's love. I had to take a really hard look and a deep dive into my own prejudices and who are the people groups, who are the thems that I didn't necessarily normally want to engage with. And this was a pretty sobering experience this week to stop and think through some of the examples of people and people groups that Christ ministered to. And if I'm going to use his life and his ministry as an example of how I want to be as a Christian, then it was pretty sobering, who I am today not, I guess, willing to spend my time with, or at least not as interested in spending my time with. But looking at some of the verses and looking at some of the stories of Christ, it was just interesting to compare the number of times where Christ went against the grain, and he went against the status quo to find people who needed his love as much as anyone else. And he did so in a way that made those around him question why, and question his, not his motivation, but why those people. And I thought it was interesting, and I'm going to share a couple of call outs from Mark in that vein. And I apologize, I have not had enough beverage yet this morning, so I feel like I'm raspy and am dry throat. The first one also in Mark is Mark 5, and I don't think that I have to pull up this story. I think that all of us know it, but I'll give the Cliff's Notes version. Christ he had just gotten off of the boat off the Sea of Galilee, and there was a person who was living in the caves, and he was absolutely outcast. Christ went to him and said, "What's your name?" And he was possessed and said, "My name is Legion, for we are many." This is the time where the demons said, can we leave this body and go into the swine? And this is where the 2,000 pigs jumped off the cliff. But the interesting piece of this story for me was that this is a person who all of the community knew was the outcast and knew as the outcast. He could not be bound by chains and shackles. He was deemed crazy. And Christ didn't heal him from afar. He didn't, wave some proverbial magic wand from the shore and say, I've taken care of that. He actually went and engaged with the person and spent time with the person, and did this, I would say, probably much to the surprise of those who were with him, because no one wanted to deal with this person. When you look at John 4, another really good example is the Samaritan woman at the well. She had a past and a present. It was interesting in looking through the historical context. Number one, she was Samaritan. Jews wouldn't normally engage with this people group. Digging in a little bit further, she was married 5 times. And that was not only unheard of, but also was cause for shun. And she had gone so far down the caste system that husband, and I'll say that in quotes, husband number 6 didn't even have to marry her. She just lived with him because she had been married 5 times and no one wanted to talk to her. And this is a person who Christ stopped and spent quite a bit of time with in the parable of the woman at the well, and really showed her love and showed her acceptance and forgiveness and inclusion. And so you have the outcast, the person who probably was deemed as having mental illness, the person with a past who Christ wasn't afraid to get his hands dirty. Looking at Luke chapter 5, the paralyzed man, he was afflicted. And in this story, Christ stopped and ministered to him. In Matthew 15, the Samaritans and the Canaanites, all of these people groups were groups of different religious beliefs. And Christ wasn't afraid to love them. He wasn't afraid to engage with them. He wasn't afraid to minister to them. And I thought that this was an excellent set of examples of who are the people that we should be looking to or looking for to minister to, and what does that mean for us as Midtown Collective, as individuals, and as Sacramentans? Who do we want to target, and who do we want to look at? Because if we say that we want to live as Christ lived and we want to do as Christ did, this one to me was a pretty difficult sermon to reflect upon, only because it was so personal on who do I not want to minister to. Is it the homeless person who sleeps out on the steps of the church? Is it someone who has different political beliefs? Is it someone who has different socioeconomic status? There are all of these other people and others groups that I had to start thinking through who was I afraid to engage and to love as Christ loved the church. What does this mean for us today? Who are the people? And this is a question that I have for everyone on our Zoom, our family of 4 right now. But who are the people who we feel we should be ministering to personally, but also as a collective? Is it the poor and the homeless? Is it the differently abled, the incarcerated? I'm getting ready to engage with Rabbi Seth here in the church building with the Exodus Project. He does prison ministry. People of different religions, people of different ethnicities, people with different sexual orientations, and all of these different groups. Who is it that we feel we should be ministering to as a collective, but also individually? And are there people who we are not, I'm going to say, interested in or afraid of, or afraid to engage? And that's a question that I think each of us have to ask individually, but at the same time, as we're planning our go forward strategy in right now Midtown Sacramento, what does that look like? And what does who is it? I don't have an answer today. It's something I'm praying about, but I think it's something that we should collectively and individually look at and consider. Question for each of you, and I hate listening to myself speak forever, but is there a group that you have either been surprised that you've had the opportunity to minister to, or that you never thought you would and ended up having some sort of a ministry opportunity or a relationship opportunity that surprised you?
Not here, anyway.
Okay. It was, I was thinking back when I was in college, we did 2 ministries. We had a prison ministry or a jail ministry where we would go in, and one Sunday evening a month, we would close the church building, and some of us would go and do a jail ministry. There was another ministry that we did for a homeless group that lived out on the beach in Pensacola, and both of them, number one, I never thought that I would get out of my comfort zone and do, but number two, it was a forced situation where we were voluntold that we were going to do it, and I'm glad we were voluntold because I learned so much from both situations, that those who were incarcerated, some of the stories, but also just some of the absolute faith of the people who were there, who everything had been taken away. And then looking at the homeless ministry, it was the same way, where it was these were people who I had never engaged with, and Pensacola didn't have a high homeless population that was visible. Pensacola probably did, but it's not like it is here, where the homeless population in California is so prevalent and so visible. It's a different approach to homeless, I'm going to say, management in Northwest Florida. So it was interesting to me to have that experience, and to see a different style of ministry and a different situational ministry as well.
Okay.
In looking at all of this, and this is the story of Legion, and the reason I wanted to come back to this one briefly is Jesus saw from afar what was going on, and he went to him. And to me, that's such a sobering example, and a sobering thought, that it's not sending the check, it's not supporting others who are on the front lines, it's not only praying for Rabbi Seth's group, it's not only praying for SAC Act and all of the other ministries that we know of in the area, and it's not only giving of offerings, but it's also getting our hands dirty. And that's where I think we can get messy in ministry really quickly, is how do we get out of our comfort zone and do that, and what does that look like, and what does that feel like, and how do we do it? How do we do it as a collective? How do we do it individually, etc.? Because it's, to me, such an interesting opportunity that we have right now in the pandemic, because I think that it's almost an opportunity for us to plan and execute so differently, because we can't, how many weeks of the year was the church actually open? But we almost have this time of planning and respite. This has almost been a full year of Pastor Lamar's winter sermons, because we are so much in the planning phase. And I think that that's an excellent opportunity for us in the next few weeks and months to realign what the ministry of Midtown Collective is going to be, and how do we want to show up. I think that it's going to be in love, but what does that look like? And when you look at this list, are there people who A, you're afraid of, or B, unsure of engaging? I will say, my heart has never been in working with the homeless population, but at the same time, in working in this building on 24th and L most of this year, I've engaged differently, and I've fed homeless, and I've spent time with the homeless, because our front steps are their house sometimes, and so it's been a different opportunity that God has given me, and really spending time with a different group than I would normally be exposed to. When I think about the different religions, the last company I worked at had the awesome opportunity to manage a team in New Delhi, India. And the entire team is of a different religion. And so I got to ask a lot of questions and do so in a safe area. And they got to ask a lot of questions of me about, my faith. And I got to ask about their faith and their tradition and upbringing and why this and how do you believe this when here's what I believe. And to me, it was so awe-inspiring to see globally that we have all these different people who we can engage and all these different groups that we can show Christ's love just in our everyday activity. And what does that look like? And what does that mean, again, locally? I'm super excited about it because I think that this is sort of a fresh start for us as a collective, and figure out and chart that. I'm excited. So my question for everyone this week is, the third crazy week of 2021, where we all prayed that 2021 was going to be different than 2020, and now I think it's just 2020 on speed in some cases. Who do you seek out to love? And is there a group or a person or a group of people who you are thinking is a good opportunity for you to minister to in 2021? I don't know.
Don't know
Got
yet.
me flat-footed, Josh. I honestly don't know. And God's going to have to work on me on this one.
Well,
Same here.
I'm inspired that I think everyone on the call, our multitude of four, I'm inspired that all four of us are open to it and that we're all open to listening to God's voice on that one. And I definitely think that is true of all of us, that we get the opportunity to love others and to be open to it and to ask questions and to find people who we feel comfortable having those conversations with. So to me, it's super exciting. And I never thought I would catch you flat-footed, Kevin, but now I'm even more excited that I was able to do it. I think this is a first.
Yeah, I am pondering also, of course, as a business person, I engage people of all backgrounds and let's see, we're recording, so let me be PC. These times are revealing some back stories about some of my business relationships. And in my flesh, I'm inclined to just say, hey, this person is on this side of the fence. I'm good with you. And as I'm in prayer, God God has me in a place of waiting, so to speak. Be still and know that I am God. So that is my prayer request, that as I'm waiting for God to guide, that I'm obedient in the meantime. And then when God makes the decision of how I shall move forward, that I am also obedient then, regardless of what God says.
Mm-hmm.
So I am seeking to love mean people. I don't want to even call the stories that you've talked about are people on the margins, but I'm talking about just mean people.
Yeah. Yeah. And going back to last week, the idea of loving in spite of what they've said or what they've done. And how do we do that? It's easy to love the people who love us, but what about the people who genuinely hate us?
Right.
We're
Yeah.
called to love. And to me, that's some of the hardest truth medicine I've had in a while. Is it's easy for me to love the people I agree with, but now how do I love these people that I really don't agree with, or that I really don't necessarily want to share a meal with, and to fellowship with? I think it's one thing that and not going into political left or rightism, but what politics has shown us in the last few years and the political landscape has shown us is it's so we're so polarized right now. And I think this gives us an opportunity to have a different type of conversation when we can. But at the same time, how do we have those conversations in love? And some days I don't have an answer. Some days I pretend to have an answer, and most of the time I'm just dumbfounded. What's going on? And so, what does our future look like? I don't know yet. But I'm just grateful that we're all open to it and are asking that question. How do we love going forward, and who do we love going forward?
Amen to that.
And Tammy, it was interesting. One of my favorite verses is "Be still and know that I am God," and I've been researching the context of that, and I've never been someone who has appreciated speakers of any type. I'm going to stop share and also stop record if I can remember how.